And when 40 years were expired, there appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai an angel of the Lord in a flame of fire in a bush. Acts 7, verse 30. It remains to say something of the burning bush. God frequently makes use of a certain similarity among things for giving us signs, and this is a common reason for the sacraments. Besides, nothing could have been more appropriate for confirming the faith of Moses in God's present business with him. Moses knew in what state he had left his people. Although they were a great multitude, they were not unlike a bush. For the denser a bush, and the more twigs it has, compactly put together, the more likely it is to burst into flame, and the fire spreads most easily to all its parts. Similarly, the band of Israelites was weak and exposed to every kind of harm. Thus, unwarlike multitude, kept down by its own dead weight, inflamed the fury of the Pharaoh until it could burst out with success. A people oppressed by accursed tyranny is like a pile of wood which has caught fire on all sides. Nothing keeps it from being quickly reduced to ashes, unless the Lord himself sit in the midst of it. Although this story refers to the unusual persecution which was aflame at that time, it nevertheless in a way depicts the perpetual state of the church, which is never in this world safe and free from affliction. For what are we but food for fire? Countless burning torches of Satan fly around constantly and set souls as well as bodies on fire. But the Lord himself, by his wonderful and matchless grace, guards and defends us. The fire, therefore, must needs so burn that in this life it reduce us to nothing. But since God dwells in our midst, he keeps us from harm in the midst of our tribulation, as we read also in Psalm 46, verse 5. And a multitude rose up together against them, and the magistrates rent off the apostles' clothes, and commanded to beat them. Acts 6:22. When Luke tells us how a crowd gathered together, how some nobodies, in fact jugglers and those who put their bodies on sale, whose sordid ways everybody knows, raised a hue and cry, he reminds us of the world's fury against Christ. Although folly and levity are ever present among the whole population, the amazing power of Satan appears when those who are otherwise reserved and stable suddenly get excited over nothing and join the company of worthless people in resisting the truth of God. Nor did the magistrates themselves show any more restraint. By their gravity they should have appeased the fury of the populace. They should have opposed violence with energy and with their resources, taken the side of the innocent. Instead, they make a disorderly and noisy arrest, and before hearing the truth of the matter, they have the apostles stripped of their clothes and whipped with green rods. Such is the deplorable depravity of mankind that almost all the tribunals of this world, which should be sanctuaries of justice, have been polluted by an impious and unholy assault upon the gospel. One might also ask, why were the apostles thrown in prison when they had already received their punishment? For prisons were established for keeping people in custody, partly for punishment and partly that more might be learned about their case. But it is evident that the servants of Christ are treated with less humanity than adulterers, robbers, and other malefactors of their kind. This gives us a clear insight into the power of Satan, who incites the spirits of men so that they observe no kind of justice when they persecute the gospel. Still, though the lot of the godly in defense of the gospel is harder than that of the godless in their wickedness, yet theirs is a brighter, because in all the evils which they undergo, they triumph gloriously before God and his angels. They indeed suffer insult and ignominy, but because they know that the wounds of Christ are more precious and carry more dignity in heaven than all the vain and smoky pomps of the earth, the more they are wronged and slandered by the world, the more abundant reason they have for glorying. For if Themistocles, 514 to 449 BC, the Athenian leader in the naval battle of Salamis against Xerxes, was a forceful and imaginative statesman, his checkered career ended in ostracism, and he went to Asia Minor, where he was received by the Persians and lived in Magnesia until his death. He was a strong man, but he does not appear to have been a model of virtue. See Plutarch's Lives. Used to be so honored by profane writers that they preferred his prison to the seats and courts of magistrates. How much more we should honor the Son of God, in whose cause the faithful at all times suffer persecution for the gospel's sake. Besides, even though the Lord allowed Paul and Silas to be inflicted with scourging at the hands of godless magistrates, yet he did not let them suffer shame without turning it into a greater glory. Since the persecutions which go with bearing witness to the gospel are left over for us from the passion of Christ, as our Prince himself converted the curse of the cross to a chariot of triumph, so also he shall adorn the prisons and gibbets of his servants, and there they shall triumph over Satan and all the sons of wickedness. They tore their garments. Since the ancient interpreter, Jerome, had translated this phrase rightly, it was wrong of Erasmus to change it to mean that the magistrates tore their own garments. Luke simply meant to say that when the holy men were beaten, the order of lawful judgment was neglected, and that those who laid hands upon them were so violent that their clothes were torn. For it was most alien to Roman custom for magistrates to tear their clothes to pieces publicly in the marketplace, especially when the matter on hand had to do with an unknown religion whose protection was no great concern of theirs. But I will not dispute at length about such an obvious matter, wherein ye greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be, you are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith, being more precious than of gold that perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. 1 Peter 1, 6 and 7. Even though the ending of the Greek verb is unclear, the sense of the passage requires that we read you exalt rather than exalt, the phrase in which refers to the manifold hope of salvation set down in heaven.